What is going on, guys? We are about a week and a half post Leadville 100, and I want to do a race recap video. This past Monday, and I'll link it in the description box below. This past Monday, we released a podcast on the Bear Performance Podcast, diving into pretty much exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video. Race recap, going over preparation, the race itself, post-race recovery, and everything in between. It was just like bottom line up front. It was an amazing experience. The mountains of Leadville, Colorado were breathtaking, beautiful. It was tough. It hurt, but we successfully accomplished the mission. So I have some notes right here I'm going to be referencing. Total time that it took for me to finish Leadville 100 was 27 hours, 53 minutes, and 5 seconds. So the race starts 4 a.m. Mountain Time on August 21st, and you had 30 hours to complete the 100 miles. So you had up until 10 a.m. Mountain Time, August 22nd. And like I said, I finished in 27 hours, 53 minutes, 5 seconds. A lot happened during that race, especially in the back half, which we'll talk about. But I just want to say I thoroughly enjoyed the race. I thoroughly appreciate the support, the DMs, the messages, the text messages, the emails, everything. The support was amazing. And from me and the BPN team, we appreciate it. Now, going into Leadville, this was my first official ultra marathon. And the way that I kind of got into Leadville was through the lottery. So Leadville 100, I've known about it for years and years and years. It's a famous ultra marathon through the Rocky Mountains of Leadville, Colorado. And the last couple of years, I submitted my name in the lottery to be chosen, and I just didn't get selected. And this was my year. So I remember sitting on the couch in my living room months ago, and I got the email from Leadville saying, entry is open. Submit your entry to be selected in the lottery, potentially. And during this time, I was in what was Ironman Texas prep, and then transitioned to Challenge Cancun prep because Ironman Texas was canceled. And I was in the middle of this prep, and Steph was next to me, my wife. And I said, hey, can I put my name in the lottery for Leadville 100 this year? She's like, yeah, do it. So a few months go by, and I'm not really thinking about it. I'm just focused on that prep and BPN and everything that's going on with the business. And I get this email from the Leadville 100 Trail Series. And it was very anticlimactic, very non-dramatic. It just said, you've been selected to run Leadville 100. We will see you August 21st in Leadville, Colorado. Have fun training. So I was like, all right. After this triathlon prep is over, I will transition to ultra prep, start logging some more volume, some more miles. Over the past couple years, diving deep into some endurance training, I knew my body could handle the volume. It has been handling the volume. It has built up some durability. So I wasn't worried going into an ultra marathon prep increasing mileage, because at that point, with triathlon prep, I was already training upwards of 3 hours a day on some days. I knew going into Leadville, there would be two things that would be difficult. One of those was the elevation at which Leadville, Colorado sits. Like right now in Central Texas, based off my Garmin, it says our altitude is 756 feet. Leadville, Colorado sits at 10,000 feet of elevation. So I knew going into this race, there'd be two things that would be challenging for me. One, running at a higher elevation and a higher altitude and having trouble possibly breathing there. And the climbing of mountains. Being here in Texas, there's not much elevation. So some things that I considered in my training and added to my routine in preparation for this. One, we added a Stairmaster to the BPN gym. So I was climbing on the Stairmaster to just get some elevation climbs. I started doing some trail running just to get ready to navigate some trails and kind of transition away from some road running. I did some night runs under a headlamp just to get ready running under a headlamp on trails again at night. And I started using a Hypoxico training system. Now, this is an altitude training system that you can sleep with. And if you saw my previous videos or Instagram posts, essentially it's this machine. You can set the altitude or elevation you want it to. And when you're sleeping, there's this tent that goes over the top of your upper body. And you can sleep at 14,000 feet. Or when I was on the Stairmaster, I'd put the mask on and I would train at 14,000 feet. And I remember the first time I put this mask on, and I was training on the Stairmaster thinking, it feels like I'm breathing through a straw right now. And that exact same feeling came back during Leadville, which I'll get to. But trained up, my longest run prior to Leadville 100 was a 50-mile overnight run that we did. Just to navigate some trails, a little bit of elevation as much as possible, and running under a headlamp at night. And that went great. The 50-mile trail run went great. And I also knew that going into Leadville, it was going to be a lot of logistical planning because we took about 16 team members. We took BPN, media, marketing, crew, support. So about 8 of us arrived to Leadville, Colorado the Monday prior to the race. It's like 5 to 6 days prior. We flew into Denver. From Denver, it's about a 2-hour drive into Leadville. And the plan was to start acclimating as much as possible, knock out some trail runs, get comfortable with the terrain, get comfortable with the route, do a route reconnaissance, and really lock in our planning for the race. So Jordan Utter, our creative director, he was there with me Monday. He pretty much took the creative team and they scouted the whole route, looking for locations where they needed to be in order to document and film this video in this race over the course of 100 miles, which is a 50-mile out, 50-mile back course. So Jordan and the creative team did an amazing job at scouting and conducting a reconnaissance of the course where they needed to be. And come race day, they just executed like that. It was great. For me, being there a week prior, I got some training runs in. With Jordan and Steph, we drove the course, looked at different checkpoints. We went to May Queen, went to Outward Bound, went to Twin Lakes, just to see what kind of train I'd be running in and where I'd be meeting the crew at different points. And I just wanted to see what the course looked like. So we got there Monday. We started planning. On Thursday before the race, the remainder of the BPN crew and support showed up and arrived. And at that point, we did a final walkthrough with them where we took them on a drive. We showed them the checkpoints, the route reconnaissance, familiarization, briefed and pitched the plan for the support teams, the crew, the media, the marketing. Everything was locked and loaded by the Friday before the race, the day before the race. We had a big meeting, a big planning session, and everyone knew going into the race where they had to be, at what time, what their job was, what their responsibility was. And I will say, everyone that was there showed up knowing their responsibility and executed perfectly. It was such an amazing thing to see come together and just build. The campaign that we built and launched around Leadville 100 was called More Than the Miles. Because from my perspective, in life or an ultra marathon or a race, especially I think an ultra marathon like Leadville 100, because there's so much that goes into it, it is more than the miles. Like if you look at a lifetime, you look at the years. You look at from when you were born till you died, and there's, maybe 85, 90 years in that span. But there's so much more than the years, right? There's peaks, there's valleys, there's highs, there's lows, there's successes and wins and failures. And I think an ultra marathon that covers 100 miles is that same thing. It isn't, or doesn't give the race or the journey justice to say it's just 100 miles. Because there's peaks, there's valleys, there's successes, there's failures, and there's a lot that happens along the way, and there's so many people involved in that process, right? So like I saw my job, my responsibility as just the person to embrace some of the suck, embrace some of the hurt. But I couldn't do it on my own. The whole team that was there, the support, the media team, the marketing team, the pacers, my wife, my brother, it was more than the miles. We all came together, we did our job, and we crossed the finish line together. So that was the campaign going into it. And we will be releasing the full documentary in the middle of October. So far, the team has gone through 30 plus hours of footage collectively, from interviews to the day before the race, to the race start, to being at the top of Hope Pass, to the finish line and post-race. The team covered everything, right? So they went through all the footage. Now they're piecing together a story, and we're planning that by the middle of October, that video will be done. The plan is to rent out a theater in Austin and premiere it there, but also premiere it on YouTube and different sites and platforms. But when that video launches, it's going to be some of the best work that the BPN team has ever put together. So this is all leading up to the race, right? And the morning of the race, it's a 4 a.m. start time, and I woke up at 2:30 a.m. Now, we had an Airbnb, which was literally a block and a half from the starting point. The starting point was downtown Leadville. It was on the corner of 6th and Harrison. And our Airbnb, like I said, a block and a half from there. So we were able to wake up, walk there. I woke up at 2:30, immediately went to the kitchen, and I mixed up G1M Sport and electrolytes because I wanted to get carbs and electrolytes in me right away. I wanted to get about 1,500 milligrams of sodium in me before the race started. And then I started making my breakfast, which I believe was a bagel with peanut butter, honey, banana, and jam. And after I consumed that, I went and started stretching, foam rolling, getting my stuff on, getting ready. Because it was brisk in the morning, I was wearing shorts and compression shorts. I was wearing a tank top with a long sleeve, almost like thermal Salomon over top. I was wearing a Salomon kit vest, and I started off with 2 flasks up top and the bladder in the back. So I had about 100 fluid ounces of fluid on me to get started. I had a hat, a headlamp, gloves, and I was wearing the Hoka One One Speed Goats trail shoes. That's what I ran in. I only switched out my shoes once. And that was at mile marker 62.5. But to get started, that's what I was wearing. And we walked a block and a half to the starting line. And the energy, I mean, I've seen videos, I've seen pictures, and I knew it was going to be high, but the energy was insane. You know, it was amazing. The energy was great. So someone sang the national anthem, and I remember thinking, this is one of the best national anthems I've ever heard. It was beautiful. Brisk, cold air. And national anthem is sung, gun shoots, and there we go. Started running. And it goes downhill, up a little hill, and into the mountains of Leadville, Colorado. And my strategy going into the race was that I was going to pull back in the beginning. I was going to be fairly conservative with my pace because it's 100 miles, right? You don't want to burn out. One of my strengths that I know is staying on top of nutrition and hydration. That is one of my strengths that I have learned through marathon and triathlon and just endurance in general. Where so many people get caught up in the race itself, they forget to eat, they forget to drink water, and they forget to top off electrolytes. And I know for me, that is my strength. So I'm constantly thinking, all right, when do I need to eat? When do I need to drink something? When do I need to top off on electrolytes? And that was always in my head, the whole 100 miles, just staying on top of nutrition, because that is a variable that you can control. So I went out very conservative, holding back. I think I started like at a 11 to 12 minute per mile pace, just cruising. And I remember that first 12 miles, and the first 12.6 miles wraps around Turquoise Lake to May Queen checkpoint, and fairly like flat terrain. You know, some changes in elevation, but not much. Like there were no climbs. And I remember that first 12.6 miles feeling effortless. And that's when I knew it was going to be a good day of running and racing. So I get the May Queen checkpoint, and at May Queen checkpoint, I met up with the crew, and the crew had all my stuff laid out. You know, I had drop bags set up, and I left at check-in the day prior. So you could leave drop bags, and the Leadville trail crew would take those drop bags to certain checkpoints. In the event that you couldn't meet up with your crew, or crew didn't have access to that checkpoint, you could go into your drop bag. In my drop bag, I had extra fuel, I had UNM Sport, electrolytes, bars, gels, extra socks, extra batteries. What was in that bag was dependent on what checkpoint it was at what point in the course. So I had drop bags strategically placed in the event that the crew didn't have access to that checkpoint, or just as a redundancy if I couldn't meet up with the crew. But the crew did a really good job at meeting me at all the checkpoints they could. So I linked up with the BPN crew at May Queen, topped off on fuel, topped off on nutrition, topped off on fluids and water. And what I did is, as soon as I arrived to a checkpoint, someone started a timer, and that timer was for 10 minutes. I didn't want to be at a checkpoint longer than 10 minutes because I wanted to keep moving, for one, but I didn't want to get stiff. I didn't want to sit down for long, get stiff, hurt, and then that affect the race. I think I averaged at most checkpoints, I was there for 5 to 6 minutes. I was in and out, topped off on everything I needed, went to the bathroom if I had to, and then kept trucking. So from May Queen, you go to Outward Bound. Outward Bound is mile marker 23.5. When I met the crew at 23.5, now from May Queen to Outward Bound, there are some smaller climbs, some uphills, some downhills, but when I met the crew at Outward Bound, you come through this field, I felt just as fresh. Like, I felt solid. I was holding a great pace. So, met up with the crew. I was there 5 to 6 minutes, kept trucking along. From Outward Bound, you pass Pipeline and Half Pipe, which are smaller checkpoints, where I pretty much just ran through those checkpoints, grabbed some water, and just kept moving through. And then you get to Twin Lakes. Now, by the time you get to Twin Lakes, this is mile marker 37.9. This is the last time you see your crew until mile marker 62.5. Now, over the entire course of Leadville 100, there is 15,600 feet of elevation gain and loss, ascend and descend. And you have to hit certain checkpoints at certain times to keep running. If you miss a cutoff time at a checkpoint, they just pull you from the race. So I arrived to Twin Lakes, mile marker 37.9, after some pretty big climbs and some big downhills. There were some big climbs from Outward Bound to Twin Lakes. And I knew Twin Lakes is really where the race started, from what I've heard. From downtown Leadville, Colorado to Twin Lakes, mile marker 37.9, that's essentially your entry into the race, because at Twin Lakes, you know you're about to go up Hope Pass. So like I said, it's an out and back, right? When you get to Twin Lakes, you climb up Hope Pass, which is about a 3,000 foot climb over the course of about 4 miles. you get to the top of Hope Pass, and at the top of the Hope Pass, you summit at 12,600 feet of elevation. And at the top of Hope Pass, you go down, you traverse down, and then from Hope Pass checkpoint as mile marker 43.5. And I remember getting to the top of Hope Pass, and you summit, and you feel like you're on top of the world. You look back to your left and right, and there's these valleys, and they're just beautiful. They just amazing views. You can feel, you're up high. So I climbed that, and that broke me off a little bit. That was tough. But I knew I had the backside now, so I ran down the backside of Hope Pass to the turnaround point, which was mile marker 50 at Winfield. Now, going up Hope Pass, I used trekking poles. When I got to Twin Lakes at mile marker 37.9, I grabbed my trekking poles from the crew. I used the trekking poles to climb up Hope Pass. And then I turned around at mile marker 50 at Winfield. There's a checkpoint there. Actually, when I was running into Winfield, I fell. And I didn't think anything of it. I fell at the checkpoint pretty much. And I stood up, and I went to one of the volunteers at the checkpoint, and I wanted to grab something from him, and I realized my hands were just dripping blood everywhere. So this medic came up. He taped up my thumb, or my pinky, which was just like gushing blood. And I was like, man, I did not feel that. So I turned around mile marker 50, and I knew, all right, I got to climb Hope Pass again. So you're climbing another about 3,000 feet. Just climbing. And I remember reaching the top of Hope Pass again. At this point, I'm pretty broke off from just all the climbing and trekking up. And I get to the top of Hope Pass the second time, and I see someone. I'm like, that looks like Tyler and Jordan, some of our creatives. As I got closer, I'm trekking up. It was Tyler and Jordan. They climbed up Hope Pass with their cameras to get shots of me coming over Hope Pass. And I can't wait to see these shots, these clips, because as I summited Hope Pass the second time, 12,600 feet elevation, it starts hailing. And Tyler's behind me as I'm running down Hope Pass, and it's hailing on me. It was wild. So, summit again, run down Hope Pass. Right now I'm on an all-time high because I'm like, I just finished Hope Pass twice. I just did all the climbing. I'm good. I'm home stretch. Let's go. So I'm running down Hope Pass. It's beautiful out, and it just got done raining, so like the ground it's wet and it's soft, a little slippery. And I roll into Twin Lakes, mile marker 62.5, and I link back up with the crew. And I link up with the crew. Preston was there. He was grilling burgers. He made a burger for me. I threw down a cheeseburger. And this is where you could pick up pacers. So I linked up with Adam Klink, who was going to be my pacer for the next about 25 miles. And out of Twin Lakes, this is where I changed shoes for the first time. Same shoe, just new pair, fresh pair of Speed Goats. Ripped off a toenail there, kept trucking along. Out of Twin Lakes, this is where I started to feel the effects of elevation and altitude. I didn't feel anything for the first 62.5 miles. But out of Twin Lakes, there's this big climb. And me and Klink are climbing this. And I could feel that, I felt fresh. Legs felt good. I didn't have any blisters the entire race. Lost some toenails. Toes are pretty mashed up just from running downhill and, slamming your toes in the toe box of the shoe. No blisters, no injuries. But as I'm climbing up out of Twin Lakes, I could feel that my chest was a little tight. And I was having trouble breathing, and I was wheezing. And I don't know if this was just a combination of the changes in elevation of climbing a Hope Pass twice, or just the compounding effects of the higher altitude being above 10,000 feet of elevation. But those last 38 miles, I really struggled to breathe, where I felt like I was breathing out of a straw. And if you heard me, I was wheezing. I was wheezing trying to breathe. That's like the biggest thing that affected me those last 38 miles. I reached the 50-mile turnaround just under 11 hours. And I was making great pace. And I was thinking, oh, I'm definitely finishing Leadville sub 25 hours. There's no doubt. Because I felt great at the turnaround. And then when I started having trouble breathing out of Twin Lakes, that's when I realized, I had to pull back the pace a lot just to be able to breathe, right? So that's a big thing that affected me those last 38 miles. But we roll out of Twin Lakes, me and Clink. There was a lot of climbing still. Lots of up and downs, a lot of elevation change to Outward Bound. And by the time we reached Outward Bound, this is probably a mile marker around 75, it got really cold. So the temperature dropped a lot. And I remember me and Clink rolled into Outward Bound, topping off on water, topping off on fuel, and both of us just uncontrollably shaking because temperature dropped, we were sweaty, we stopped moving. So we topped off on everything right away, threw another layer on. At this point, I had 2 long sleeve thermals on, and we started just booking it out of Outward Bound because we wanted to increase our body temperature. We had to get blood moving. So we're just booking it out of Outward Bound. Body temperature increases, shivering stops, we're good to go. That was the last place I was cold. There was only one point of that race that I was cold, and that was it, where I was just uncontrollably shaking. So we roll out of Outward Bound. We head to May Queen checkpoint. We arrive at May Queen, and at May Queen, I know I have 12.6 miles left and plenty of time, well ahead of time. Some of those climbs, it slowed me down a lot, but I banked so much time in that first 50 miles that I had time allocated to a lot for that back half. And got to May Queen checkpoint. May Queen checkpoint around mile marker 88 was a pretty low spot. We have pictures, and I'm just like zoning off. And Clink switched out. Michaela Utter, who's Jordan's wife, she switched in as my pacer. And Michaela and I took that last 12.6 miles into the finish line of downtown Leadville. And because it's out and back, I knew that last 12.6 miles was just going around Turquoise Lake into downtown and running up into the finish line. And I remember cresting the hill. The sun is up at this point in the morning. Cresting the hill, and you're overlooking downtown Leadville. And one of the things that was cool about coming into all the checkpoints is when you were about a mile out, you could hear people cheering and chanting and yelling. And it was like this energy you were about to experience. So every time you roll into a checkpoint, your energy just gets jacked up. And it was awesome. It was great. And I crested the hill to overlook downtown Leadville, and you can hear cowbells, you hear people yelling and screaming and chanting. So I come down the hill, and right before I enter the gates of the finish line, the BPN team came on either side of me, and we crossed the finish line together in 27 hours, 53 minutes, and 5 seconds. Leadville 100 completed. And what's crazy is that last 10 miles, I was thinking about this burrito. I talked about this in the podcast. Last 10 miles, I'm thinking about this burrito at this coffee shop in downtown Leadville. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, Steph was like, "Is there anything you need?" I was like, "Can someone please go get me this burrito? I've been thinking about it for the last 10 minutes. So someone goes, grabs some burritos for the team. We head back to the house, which was nice. It was a block and a half walk back to the Airbnb. And I lay down on the couch, take the shoes and socks off. Legs were sore and tired, but no injuries, nothing crazy, no knee or ankle pains. Feet were just wrecked. Toes were black and blue, toenails falling off. Toes were the biggest issue. I think my toes were my biggest issue, but no blisters, nothing like that. My toes were an issue just because being on the trails, stubbing toes, tripping over roots, running downhill, and like I said, your toes are hitting the toe box. I think that was just the main issue with the toes, but my body was just pretty fatigued. And I laid down on the couch, took one bite out of that burrito that I've been thinking about for the last 10 miles, and it just sent my body into pretty much shock. And ran to the bathroom, dry heaved a few times, got a shower, passed out for a few hours. I was very fortunate that I had no or very little gastrointestinal distress. No nausea. I wasn't nauseous. The goal with like an ultra is to get as much food and fuel in as possible without getting sick. And I was able to keep shoving food and gels and G1M Sport and electrolytes and salt tabs down my throat into my stomach without getting sick. So that was a win. Right? I was able to fuel myself through the race, not get sick at all, no injuries, and those first couple days after, my body was absolutely it was trashed. I think the biggest thing was I couldn't sleep for those first 3 nights after the race. And mainly because I still couldn't breathe. I couldn't get a deep breath. That first night after Leadville, I probably slept an hour. The second night, 2 hours. Just because I couldn't get a deep breath. So it took me a few days to get a solid night's sleep and be able to breathe good again. And again, I think it was the changes in elevation, the altitude. But that week after Leadville, I was pretty destroyed. I was pretty wrecked. But as soon as I finished, the mindset shifts instantly for me, and it's all right, recovery. So it was nice. Our Airbnb had a sauna in it. It just happened to have a sauna. So I was using the sauna in that Airbnb quite frequently the days after the race. There was a hot tub there. I was using the hot tub. I was, again, getting on top of hydration and electrolyte consumption. I wasn't that hungry for the first 2 days after the race, but I was just shoving food down my throat because I knew food was going to help me recover. Proper nutrition was going to help me recover. So as soon as that race finished, we celebrated, there was this mindset shift of, all right, now recovery is priority. Sauna, compression boots, cold tub once we got back, massage, chiropractor, nutrition, sleep, everything, bringing the body to feel better again. And here we are, a week and a half post Leadville 100. One of the best experiences of my life. It was an amazing race. The crowd, the community, the support was next level. It was pretty much untouched to anything I've ever experienced before. And it's one of those races that I would love to do again. But I think off the top of my head, there's some other ultras that I'd love to chase down and accomplish before that. I think next time going after Leadville, I would like to live in Colorado for a little bit prior to the race to acclimate to the altitude and elevation a little bit better and just run some of the trails and run the mountains and do some 14ers and just do some more hiking prior to getting to Leadville again. But that was fun. That was a great race, great experience, and I look forward to at some point doing it again. So like I said, the full doc will be released the middle of October, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys in the next video.